So I think it's that gathering the data and saying, well, actually, from day to day, we need to tailor that person's support according to their individual ability. That's the ideal of person-centred or personalised care. How easy is that to integrate? And if we had the technology to say, well, do you know, at the moment they're in really good state, this would be the best time to do this. In fact, the trend is that over a 3-day period or a 7-day period, these are the days that person is really in good form. Yes. And these are the days that should be duvet days. These should be their rest days. Yes. And what influences that? Is it a family visit? Is it a GP's visit? Is it a particular activity? Yeah. And I think gathering that data would harvest some really rich information.
Yeah. And I think we do that, but not in a
it's not formalised,
no,
is it?
no. We just know. Yeah, you just know, and you can look at. So we pull sort of like the emotional support charts to look at, you know, when somebody's become distressed. And we do try and sort of like track it back to what happened on that day. Sometimes we're quite good at it, sometimes not so good. I think it's definitely an area that needs improving. I think it is something we do, but it needs a more formal approach. Because
it was on shift that day.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I think we're coming on to that in terms of data sharing, how important it is in terms of providing joined up care. It's obviously very substantially important. Yeah.
I think most of the data sharing would be through research projects that are done. So I think most of us, particularly at our level, will be looking at what the research says, and then trying to interpret that into our own businesses and implement it, so that we've got that evidence base to reflect back on and to be able to demonstrate that we are doing the right thing. As I said, it sounds like you're the same. We're very data rich. As an industry, yes. We're very data rich. We don't always use that data, but it is there. And possibly more collaborative working would give us more of those trends, more of those pictures.
It's also how it can be data shared with with NHS and researchers, and how their data can be shared back with providers, because it's not just about care providers handing their data over or providing their data, it's how they can get data back to them and how it benefits them. I think it's the thing with data sharing. I think because we've come so far along as sort of society in that sense, as data driven, we kind of forget how important and how useful and how much data is actually worth. So it's all about incentivizing providers to make sure they can give their data over and provide it and work with whoever they're providing it to make sure they also then receive the data back. So it's a bit, I don't want to say two-way street in that sense, because it's not about just, okay, I only do this if you do it, but it's about wanting to proactively share data with one another. And I think that's, again, a culture thing with the NHS and researchers wanting to work with providers.
It's looking at the end goal, isn't it?
Yes,
That's, we all need to look at that end goal.
It's all about the, because one of my colleagues always likes to break it down in terms of, data sharing or technology. Always has to meet 3 sorts of criteria. It's 1, how does it benefit the individual? 2, how does it benefit the organisation? And 3, how does it benefit the sector? So I think meeting those 3 criteria is very important, because yes, at the end of the day, it's about improving the quality of life of the person who we're caring for. They're the thing. They're what's driving all of this, really.
Yeah. I think the other thing is that you talked earlier about the NMDS, the National Minimum Data Set. The reason it's not taken up quite often by organisations is because it's so labour intensive.
Yeah. Yes, that's
and back-ending that, and I think we lose a lot of funding as a result of that, or have done in the past, because it's just not easy to, particularly with a very transient workforce, to actually put that information in.
Yes, I mean that's especially the capacity tracker. I mean that's the growing from that. Just yes, so I mean we're going to probably see that eventually turn into some minimum data set, but without the funding for it. So it's how does government make sure that, in order to encourage providers to fill in this data and share this data, how do we get them to do so? How does this benefit them? Because capacity tracker, as I'm sure you both know, it was hard to communicate those benefits because you just didn't see it.
It was just another job, and
it's another job. At the moment, that people, you'd still get social workers phoning up saying, what's going on.
Yes.
We'll just
Yeah,
spend an
it was
hour
sort of
filling-
the need to remove that duplication in that sense, and I think it's one of the things. It's all good and well saying providers need to up their data sharing, using data, but commissioners and local authorities also need to understand what this data means and how they can use this data, because many of them don't, and then it leads the calls up.
We have to be able to demonstrate to families why we're doing things. It's not just and to our teams, why are we doing this? And the answer really always is whatever we introduce has to be as simple as possible. Has to be as quick and simple as possible, because we can't just pull people out for a day's training. We're short of colleagues anyway, so pulling people out for a day's training is...
It's impossible half the time, and then if you do, they're sitting there thinking, I'm going to have to go back to work in an hour, and I've got this to do, and I haven't done that, and so they're not focused, they're not concentrating on the training. We've had to really pare back and just make sure we're focusing on the essentials, to give them a break, because they are, like you say, they're absolutely exhausted, just throwing stuff at all the homes all the time. And they don't know which way to turn. So it's what's important, what can wait. Let's prioritise and make sure that, again, the end result, i.e. the experience and outcomes of the resident, are the main focus.
And part of that is about how we sell it to our teams. That there's a tendency to have this top-down approach of, we think this is great, so you're going to do it, rather than, no, actually, we think this is great, but how would you make that work, and what do you think? So really engaging the workforce, the families, the residents that we're caring for, and saying, look, we're thinking of this. What do you think? Let's educate you around it first before we say, yes, we're going with it. I think there's a little bit of slowing down, taking a deep breath and saying, who's this going to impact the most? Because we have in our heads, well, we want this to happen. We want people to fall over less often. We want people to be in less pain. All of those things, we have that in our heads. But what's the impact on the individuals on the floor? And just stepping back and saying, actually, how do we do this in the most comfortable way that we can, and the most compassionate way we can to make it work?
Money. It's money. Yeah, always boils down to money. That's what it's. What we've said, if you're privately, majority privately funded, you're in a better position than if you're local authority funded. It is really quite poor. Some areas are worse than others, but providers need that financial support.
And there are additional costs. Nothing comes without an additional cost, whether that's more time for people to learn about the product, whether it's mobile phones to be able to actually, because unless you've got the technology in place in your care recording system, then you're going to have to build resource within the system. So there are pretty much always additional costs, and that's, as I say, maybe people time, or actually hardware.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Funding. I think the funding's the main thing which you need to resolve. And then on top of that, issues of culture, collaboration. Yes. I mean, we are seeing, especially from the top in terms of the government, we are starting to see them, they are starting to slowly understand that they need to work collaboratively with providers. However, they just want to do it really quickly, and providers just don't have the capacity to do it. So I think there needs to be more of an understanding in that. Interoperability, which we've already spoken about, I think that's very important to overcome. But funding, I think funding is essential. How can you implement new technologies without adequate funding? It's just impossible.
Yeah, and make it simple. You say make it simple
as possible
easy.
For people to learn.
Yeah. Can I ask honestly, PainCheck, just some feedback from 0 to 10 in terms of its ease and simplicity, or where would you rate it right now from your personal experience?
So Cheryl's going to answer that one, because we're only just on our start of our journey with it. We've only just started to teach people about it.
So from my perspective, I use every time I walk into one of the homes. I use it. I need to sort of like keep up to date with it all. So I find it really, really easy. I was with I was in a home a couple of weeks ago, and one of the carers said, "Oh, no, I don't know how to use that." I was like, "Well, let me show you." And she's like, "No, I don't understand. Let me show you." And she's like, "Oh, actually, it is quite easy, isn't it?" I think sometimes it's the perception, and it is having that time. Yes, they go through the training, and like many people, I don't learn sat listening to somebody. I like to be out and practicing. Being able to mentor people and coach people to use it, they pick it up immediately.
Yeah.
Sitting and listening, they're not so good. Everyone learns differently. It is an easy app to use, but I think it is. You've got to use it.
You've got to be doing it.
Yeah. So yeah, I think some people find it easier than others, but from a personal perspective, it's dead easy. You can't go wrong with it.
I'd say the future looks positive. I think that's a good way to sort of end it. I mean, we are seeing investment into the white paper released in December, shows great digital. I mean, digital was the focus of it. That was the best thing to take away from it. So there's a big drive forward forward with tech in social care. So I think it's positive. We just need to make sure we just meet all those barriers and criteria and get over those. But I think it's a good thing going forward, and I think it's a good time to be in social care, because although we've been hit massively, we've always bounced back, and I think that's it's exciting. It's going to be exciting over the next 5-10 years.